Good morning. Thank you for joining. We have Jane Best with us today, Seeking Sustainability Live number 26. Thank you so much for joining us, Jane.
You're welcome. Good morning to everyone.
Would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, as you said, I'm Jane Best. I have been in Japan for 35 years. Actually, no, 36, 2020. I'm British, as you can hear. And when I first came to Japan not first came to Japan, but we ran a restaurant here for 12 years. And then in 2000, I became a volunteer with RIJ, Refugees International Japan, and now work full time for them.
It was interesting when we haven't met in person, I don't believe, but we're both
No.
long time in Japan. And when I was researching about you before this interview, I was researching Jane Best OBE, and I assumed you were married to a Japanese person and your last name was Obe. But please explain what OBE means.
It's happened to lots of us before.
Does it?
It's
Okay.
not the first time I've heard that, Mr. Obe. It's an award given by essentially the Crown in the British throne, and it's awarded for all sorts of things. There's various levels. It means Officer of the Order of the British Empire.
It's wonderful. My husband is British, so I should know better, apparently. But he said it's very auspicious and a very wonderful award. So congratulations. When did that happen?
2002.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's introduce your website and blog a little bit. This is Refugees International Japan, your blog page. Do you want to introduce what kind of information you have on this?
On the blog page, there's story. We've actually got into a storytelling relay at the moment. So members of the team are telling their stories. Some of them are already up bilingually. Some of them are waiting for the translation. We also post updates on what refugees are achieving around the world, how they are contributing, giving back to the communities to highlight the reason for our mission. And in the past, interns have posted information on their experience of being interns with us and so on. So it's pretty mixed.
Yeah, wonderful. And if you're interested in following, it looks like it's bilingual, English and Japanese for
Yes.
the blog posts. And you can sign up with your email here and then you'll automatically get updates. I like that feature. Also on your, let's see, you have a good Facebook page. I think this is your YouTube channel. So you have some videos about your work on YouTube, on Facebook, and you're on LinkedIn, of course. Any other channels? The main website, I guess, is the other one?
The main website, we're on Instagram. We have a Twitter feed. Mostly these are looked after by the interns. At the moment, we have some very good active interns who are doing a great job with the social media. So it's quite good postings. Yeah, I noticed that this got some good likes yesterday. So FSL, this live stream, yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad to help. Your Facebook page is here. If people are interested, it's at Refugees International J at the end to find you. You've got beautiful photos. I think a lot of people might be confused. I think there's a lot of discussion about refugee versus immigrant. Do you want to just briefly explain what you guys do with Refugees International Japan?
Well, yes, there is a lot of confusion on immigrants, migrants, refugees. Refugees and what we call IDPs, internally displaced people, have had to leave their homes because of persecution, belonging to the wrong social group, conflict, mostly conflict, whereas migrants and immigrants choose to leave. And so, of course, you see people getting very upset about the numbers fleeing across, like the Mediterranean, for example, to get to Europe. And, how many of them are refugees? Nobody's ever able to document that. But the greater majority are migrants. Migrants is an interesting term. I was listening to somebody talking about it the other day, and It was a YouTube and a podcast, and they were talking about migrants and refugees and so on, and said how English people, British people, would never call themselves migrants or immigrants. We're always expats.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
So it's all to do with titles and labels and, you know, what you don't want to be known as. And in the long term, nobody wants to be labelled a refugee for the rest of their life.
Right.
So, you know, how do we use labels and how do we misuse labels as well is matter for much discussion.
Of course. You've got some great interviews on TEDx and stuff like that we'll talk about later. This one you did with Japan Times, I believe, and you say we offer refugees training in leadership, environmental care, and legal rights. Some are now going back to Myanmar. They are starting to give to their former communities, which is great to see. We could do all the work we do at the site in Tokyo, but I wouldn't be able to put my hand on my heart and say that's happening. Have things changed since this article, or pretty much the same situation?
Going back to Myanmar?
No, that there's not as much that you can do just from the Tokyo office.
We can't do anything from the Tokyo office in terms of what we would call sustainability. It's the people on the ground that are going to do it.
Right.
And that is our mission, is to fund projects that are run by the host community and the refugee community or the displaced community. And that ensures that it will go forward and make a difference. And so, yes, I mean, the projects, it's essential that the projects we fund involve that they can go on to do something beyond the funding time, and that they can go on to do more for themselves and for their communities. So your theme here is sustainability. Sustainability went into our mission statement way back in the early 2000s. I remember writing it about 2003. Didn't realize I was ahead of my time. But
oh, really?
Says she arrogantly.
No, it's always been important. It's just something that's come up in media recently, right?
Yeah.
So,
and what is sustainable? You know, that's always the question. You know, how can you look at a refugee project and say it's sustainable, you know, when they're in so-called temporary situations? Well, you look at how to make it sustainable in the long term for the individuals and so on.
Well, I always, you know, people are confused thinking sustainability is so narrow of a narrow topic. It applies to everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's about quality of living for people, human rights. It's about the environment. It's such a wide, far-reaching, everywhere topic.
Yeah.
So,
and human rights is what we're all about. So
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we're learning that sustainability, not everything is as sustainable as we thought it was, aren't we?
Yes.
At the moment.
Yes, we are. You have some great introductions to what you do in the TEDx Youth Talk. Do you want to introduce the idea of utopia? I love that explanation.
I did too.
Yeah,
it was interesting. It was one of the most difficult things I've done for years and years, because you had to remember everything. You had to, you didn't have your notes. It's quite tough.
You didn't have a prompter or something?
No.
Okay.
No, it's amazing. I had to walk around the streets for a couple of days beforehand. I couldn't work it out sitting in front of a computer because there were too many prompts there.
Yeah.
Yes, the TED Talks, I think most of them have themes, but this one had a theme. The square root of utopia was the theme that they presented to me. It's a youth one, and there were 3 adults, I believe, who were asked to speak. And I took the theme very seriously. Nobody else did. Hardly anybody else spoke about utopia, and it was quite funny. But in my search for it, you know, what does utopia mean? It means no home, and that's where it comes from. I thought, well, that's perfect for refugees. They've got no home.
Yeah.
I fiddled the square root in at the end, but I didn't really need to do that. But yes, I just dwelt on the fact, on the theme of no home but making no home, and seeking utopia as we see it as perfection and so on. And so you can weave into sustainability. It was a great relief to have finished that talk.
You did such a great job, and you seem so calm and totally at home up there.
Well, we got there. It was a really very good experience. I'm
That's
not
great.
rushing to do it again, but yeah.
I think you were talking about Sir Thomas More's
Yes.
idea of utopia.
Yeah. 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 And so Wikipedia was magic there.
Yeah. And you said where refugees find themselves, everyone is equal in terms of they're all reduced to the same thing.
This is, yeah. In my visits, I meet a variety of people, and they can have come from all sorts of different backgrounds, but they are brought to the same level, if you want to use the word level, in homelessness, where to go next, opportunities available for them. So yes, it is well, it's a humbling experience, as I'm sure that's an understatement, but yeah, that's what happens in a refugee camp.
Yeah, and in terms of environmental sustainability, we're going to start to see more refugees from climate change. And are you
Yes.
already seeing that in your work? People
Um,
having to leave because of environmental reasons, not just political.
I'm not seeing it in my visits particularly. We're a very small group. We're just here in our office in Tokyo, and there's 3 staff, and the rest are volunteers. So we're not. We keep our focus on our mission, and it is conflict displacement. But there is more and more displacement going to happen with the climate. You see the islands like down in the South Pacific. They're getting swamped by the sea.
Yep.
Where are they going to go?
Yeah.
They're an island.
Exactly. Even, it could be people living in Manhattan in New York.
Yeah.
It's going to affect everybody. And I think the whole idea, which you touch on in a lot of your talks, is the concept of us and them, and how it's so difficult to get over that barrier of us being different from them. Whereas once you start telling individual stories, people can realize, oh, wow, they're like me. They're similar to me, you know?
Very, very. I mean, they are amazing people. I mean, and so many different personalities. And, like I remember telling some stories at one of the schools, and one of the students said, "Oh my goodness, that's what I want to do, and that's what I want to become." And it suddenly becomes much more real.
Yeah.
And we talk about anybody else but us as them and they. We even do that when we're talking about committees and so on. Or what did they say?
Yeah.
But when it comes to the refugee population, which is about 70 million around the world, they are a lot of individuals.
Yeah.
And those individuals make up incredible stories. And the more we can tell those stories, the better.
And then
It's
there's
all work, you're right.
Yeah, and then the idea of telling individual stories, and also the idea of celebrity. Like you mentioned the Sierra Leone Refugee All Stars, the
Yes.
band, and I searched on YouTube and found their wonderful music, and that is also a way to transcend the whole barrier of us them, right?
Yeah. And they did a film too. I don't know if that's a movie. I'm not sure if that's on YouTube. I have a copy of
I
it.
couldn't
But
I
that's
couldn't find the
great.
documentary. Yeah.
Yeah. I met them. It was great. They came to Fuji Rock Festival years
Oh,
ago,
awesome.
early 2000, and I met them. It was lovely, absolutely lovely to meet them.
And it's amazing to listen to their music, and it's so uplifting and happy. But once you realize their story and the backstory and all the horrible experiences they had
Yeah,
to become refugees was the better part, but all the suffering they went through beforehand.
yeah.
Powerful.
The Sierra Leone conflict was particularly bloody. I think is the best word.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
cruel. Yeah,
You've
yeah.
traveled a lot. There's a picture here of you on the Thai-Burma border. Do you want to talk about what kinds of things you do when you travel to these areas? Like, are you doing training or?
Um, I going to visit and meet and watch and see what they're doing and learn from them, basically. No, we're not doing training because they are the best people to do the training, I have to say,
Great.
and it's our approach is definitely bottom up, and not taking our ideas into cultures that we don't really know. We can try to know, but we don't know as well as the people there. It was a very interesting comment in a video I was watching the other day about one of the projects, is if they're run by the people that live there, they're people they trust. And I think that's really important. So what I do is I go there and I have a look at to check that the finances and the bookkeeping obviously is of prime importance, but to listen to them and hear their experiences, how it's gone, what would be better, what they think should be done and how they're going to do it and so on. And that's how I learnt, going back to early 2000 when I started to travel to meet, to visit the projects, learning what is the best way to support. Yeah, of course, everyone needs food, water, and so on. That's in the emergency situation, but the majority of them will tell you that they need a future, they need dignity, and so on. So that's all the stuff I learn when I go traveling, and also to meet contacts and build contacts. If we get a new application, I can contact somebody to say, do you know this group? So it's a mixture of things.
So, of course, you can't travel now because of the coronavirus problems. Is that really hindering the kind of work that you're able to do? You can't go face to face, or have you transitioned more to online kind of collaboration?
I would only do visits once or twice a year anyway.
Okay.
Cost-wise, again, how much we spend on the visits. The last visit was September.
Okay.
So I hadn't actually got any plans. So it hasn't hindered that, although looking forward as to when we can next travel is definitely a problem. But we have done some online. We actually had an online forum recently with one of the projects on the Thai-Myanmar border. And our team could ask them questions and get to see them as well. I mean, we can't all go traveling to see them, so that was a great opportunity. So I'm thinking that we'll do that with some of the other groups as well. Yeah, we're all learning the online meeting.
Yeah.
And there's great advantages to them as well as challenges.
Certainly.
That will go up on our YouTube channel, so people will be able to see that forum.
Great. And I think your website, your blog, your YouTube channel is all showing transparency, which is so important. You often talk about transparency in fundraising and making sure the money goes to the right place. Do you want to comment on that?
I think it's essential. It's absolutely essential. And people should be asking where their money is going. And if they can't get an answer, they need to think about whether that's the best way to do it. So we do have figures on our website as to how money can impact, how the funds can impact. And well, according to registration, our accounts are up there and everything else. But I think it is really important not just to see the money, but to hear from the people. And that's where the stories come in, because they will tell you how much they've achieved through the funding. You can't stress it enough.
Yeah.
Why give to somebody you don't know where that money's going?
Well, that's a problem with so many things in sustainability right now, is the big companies are saying that they're sustainable and they're very good at marketing this green aspect. But when it comes down to it, are they? It's very kind of shallow or hollow in that way. But then there are businesses, there are people who are very sustainable, but they don't know how to market that aspect as part of their brand. And that's a big problem. So if you are doing good things, as you guys are, being transparent is so important, because the customer, the viewer, is so skeptical and cynical now, and they kind of have to be, right?
Yep. And marketing is our weakest point, I think. We know what we're doing, and we do. The projects are amazing, but we need all the help we can get on marketing. You're right. People are very clever with their marketing, and I know what I see when I go traveling. And yeah, good marketing makes a whole lot of difference.
And it can trick you.
It does trick you. It does trick you.
But
Not
then
always, of course.
when
But
you realize, you become really anti that company. So I think in the end, it defeats the purpose of trying to trick customers, because once they find out, they're never going to buy your product again.
hopefully.
Well, hopefully, yeah. On your website, it says, since its founding, RIJ has distributed $7 million to 500 projects in 50 countries throughout the world, including Sudan, Uganda, Colombia, Thailand, Lebanon, and Gaza. That's from your website. Is that current information?
Yeah, that's over the 40 years that since it was founded. A lot more funding went out in the bubble time and into the 90s. So our funds are much lower these days, right down now, because we've got no activities going. And our principal areas of target areas at the moment are the Thai-Myanmar border, Nairobi, and Lebanon. We have current partner. Well, we have funded projects there, and we're still in touch with them, and we would like to fund them again. But yes, all those places, and I reckon I've been to about 25, 30 countries to visit projects that we funded in the past.
Wow.
Amazing. Loved it.
That is amazing. And in terms of flying everywhere, it's not great for sustainability, but developing those relationships, it is really important that you get there and you see the culture firsthand and you understand that connection with local people. I'm glad you can do some of it online, but I understand the travel is very important part of it.
Well, I suppose I'm in a fortunate position because I have done that traveling.
Right.
So we do have that knowledge within our group now. It's not as if we're starting out. But when I first joined RIJ, I hadn't had a lot of experience with the refugee world and so on. I've worked with various other NGOs and so on in the past. And so I was pleased to join it because they wanted somebody to work on the projects, which was right up my street. And so I set about going out to find details and to understand them. So, for example, when I was on holiday in Thailand, as I love going on holiday to Thailand, I, sidetracked to go off and meet refugee communities and learn a little bit more about them and understand things before looking at our mission statement and looking at where we should go. So I was able to gain quite a lot of information in the early days just by simply talking and meeting people without any formality.
No, that's a fantastic way to start from that foundation of knowledge of actual situation, right? I love this quote. I think you did a great interview a few years ago with Savvy Tokyo. And the quote says, people don't want to be dependent. So the best thing to do is to give them a chance to create their own fortunes. And I think that's often a misperception of refugees or immigrants, is that they will be dependent on our economic system forever. But I think you're so right that people are striving for independence. They don't want to be dependent. They want to.
It all comes down to dignity, doesn't it? I mean, that's the essential thing. I remember doing an event where we used the Sierra Leone Refugee All Stars film and music, a big music event down near Diba, and there was a refugee supporter of ours there, and so people were asking questions. What do refugees want? What do they need most? Expecting, and of course you get the answer: water and so on and so forth in the emergency situation. But I turned to this guy Tin Win and I said, "What would you say?" And he just said, "We want dignity." And so he used his quote for years and years afterwards. He's gone home now, which is very nice to hear. Anyway. Yes, people don't. Well, the myths. Oh, yes, they're all poor. They're all uneducated. They've come to take our jobs. They've come to use our health welfare systems, and the image of refugees is that's what they are, and bad image. It is a very bad image. But what it comes down to is that the majority of people don't want to go anywhere at all. They want to stay near home. When we're looking at the number of refugees in various countries seeking asylum, it's a small number compared to 70 million people, and probably that's an estimate, because how can you know exactly how many, who are being displaced and are living a so-called temporary existence. And so those people don't want to go and take our jobs or anything. They want to be useful members of the community. And there's nothing worse than having to, as you know, some of us are finding now, we're having to look to where we can get some extra money because of jobs and so on, having to not being able to work. And that's not nice. You want to feel that you're able to look after yourself. And so refugees have exactly the same issue. They want to be independent. They want to live a normal life. So it's very much our theme. We've recently been using the phrase donate to end dependence and end the cycle of aid. You know, the more we do for communities to provide opportunities, not help, but to provide opportunities, the better it will be for everybody.
That's wonderful. And so important to keep that in mind. I think the whole idea of fundraising and charity, you've also done really well with different events, which we'll talk about soon. But you also come from a business background, and I think that's an interesting perspective for you, having gone from a business where you started getting interested in raising money for Sri Lanka, I believe, and then it kind of took you on this journey to join 20 years ago with Refugees International, right? So there was a article, maybe the Savvy article for Tokyo, said, how has your experience in business influenced you? And you talk about running the restaurant, raising money for Sri Lanka, and then it was such a great experience that it kind of led you down this path. You want to come in on that?
Yeah, I mean, also running a restaurant brings you into contact with lots of different people, which I think is the other side to that. I am, management trained or educated, whatever you like, back in college days. And it set me up for quite a lot of different things. It was actually hospitality management. So it was very varied. And in the end, although I'm not sure quite what it qualified me for, it did give me a lot of different experience. And yes, running the restaurant, you do have to learn to think on your feet and adapt to circumstances. And we went through from the bubble right down to the bubble bursting, and so we saw a lot of changes in that time, and adapting to changes I think is really important. Plus the amazing variety of staff. I think at one point my husband worked out we employed 39 nationalities over the 12 years we ran the restaurant. Wow. So working with those different people as customers and as staff was also a very, very valuable experience. But yeah, I mean, running your business and being independent, not easy, but it was a good experience.
Yeah. It was called the 1066, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you know what that means?
No.
You're married to a British man.
No. He said, because we've been up and down, we've been to Tokyo multiple times over the years. And he said, I'm pretty sure I've been there. I don't know. I don't know what it means.
1066 is the date that, well, I think these days probably it's different, but the majority of Brits early on, that was the only date they'd remember from history. So if it was called 1066, they'd know it was something to do. It was actually England, not Britain at the time, but who's quibbling about that? And so, yes, when thinking of a name, we actually got down, and so the Japanese called it Ichimaru Rokuroku, which was just quite. It was also an interesting experience. Your previous question was about the experience of it. We had to do so much TV because if they called you up and said we want to do a program, even if you didn't want to do it, which I didn't, because my Japanese was really subpar. You had to do it, and it was great PR. So, and actually, in lockdown or not lockdown, stay home times, we were going through some old videos and painfully watching me doing some of those videos. But that was very helpful for public speaking.
Oh, that's good. I
So,
mean, I've
but
been on TV as well a few times, as you are when you're here for a long time running a local business. It's not easy, but yeah, like you said, it's good part of your personal and business branding, I would say.
I don't mind doing it in English. I just
Yeah,
don't fall for it. It's so hard to put passion into anything you're saying in another language. I
yeah.
find that very difficult.
I find that too. From the Savvy Tokyo article, Katrin pulls out, of course, people need food and water, which is needs based, but we provide opportunities, hope, and a way for refugees to be independent through rights based assistance. So I think
Yeah.
that plays on what we were talking about before.
Yes,
Um,
that sums it up, I think, pretty well.
what do
Yeah.
you mean by rights based assistance? Could you explain that?
Um, as as individuals, we have rights within the system that we're living. And with a British passport, we have the right to travel. We have the right for welfare provided within the country, within Britain. And now I'm not there. I'm here in Japan. I have signed up, for the health system here and so on and so forth. So we have our rights within the law here. Now, for the average person who's been displaced from their home without their choice, they don't have IDs, they don't have registration, so they don't get the rights that we as registered citizens have. And that's legal as well, often the legal rights for representation and so on and so forth. So that's what we mean by when we're talking about human rights. So when we're looking at funding, and the projects are giving people that opportunity. One of the projects we fund on the Thai-Burma border actually is training. It's a training course which covers things like human rights, legal rights, and that also covers care of the environment. It's quite a varied thing. And the interesting thing was, on one of my visits, I asked the students what surprised them, what impressed them about the course. And one woman stood up and she said she'd learnt about women's rights. She had no idea that women had rights. She thought they were just, there to cook and look after the children. And since that course, she's gone on to set up 3 different women's groups. And she's totally motivated by that. And the other one was very interesting. A young man stood up and said he'd learnt about government. And he'd learnt about the structure of government, how it works and so on and so forth, which he had no idea about. These are all students from Myanmar, I might emphasize. And essentially, he had no idea that people could vote for their government.
Wow.
And we take so much for granted.
Yeah.
And so it's really helpful to hear these things that, make us recognize what privilege, if you like, what advantage we have as somebody who has the basic human rights.
Yeah. Even the basic human right to travel.
Yeah.
You tell a beautiful story about a young man in Rwanda, and he has a job, he has music, he has lots of prospects. In fact, he won an award, but he couldn't go to New York because he was a refugee.
Yeah, he had no papers. That's Bizimana, fascinating young man, who actually runs quite a good business in Nairobi as a result of the training course he did. I don't think he needs a lot of training. He is totally motivated. And he did this video, which we've used in quite a thing, about being a refugee. And yes, he won that award. No papers. He has a paper to sign him on with the UN in Nairobi, but he hasn't got any papers.
What was his name? I'll search for his video.
Bizimana Francois. Bizimana, as it sounds. Bizimana.
Francois. Okay, I'll search that. Yeah,
It's a
he
great
sounds.
video. He's into rap and so on. He does that, and he wrote it all, and he did the video. Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
fun. He's a lively man. He's great.
Wow,
I met him twice and seen how his business increased within 2 years, I think, of 2 or 3 years of visiting. Amazing. He now employs people, employs local people. So that, this is, sorry, I'm diverting a little bit, but this is an example of contributing to the community and giving back to the economy as well. So he's providing employment. He's using local produce. So he's helping the market He's paying his taxes, and he's looking after his family.
I mean, that reminds me of the fact that coming from a country, America, where we are made of immigrants, and how they have facts and figures which show immigrants are much better for the economy than a lot of people who've lived there all their lives. And I mean, that's such a great story to hear about refugees that go on to start business, employ other people, are really building their communities, hardworking.
We've done some research on this and found figures of the economy where it shows that refugee communities who've settled overseas are generally more stable, and they therefore create stability in the local economy. I don't have the figures in front of me, of course, but I first encountered the advantage of this. I went to a place called Adjumana in the northwest of Uganda, and a lot of refugees settled there from, well, mostly from Sudan there. And I walked down the main street of the town, and the majority of the businesses on that main street were run by refugees. They'd been there some time and they settled. Uganda's actually very good at allowing refugees to work. It's a very interesting economic model. And they were busy. I mean, they were thriving businesses, as you've said, employing people, and it's all keeping the economy flowing and moving.
That's wonderful. Let's talk about fundraising, because that's a major part of what you guys do. First, on your website, it says to support our cause. There's actually 7 different ways that you talk about. Do you want to explain that? So make a donation.
7. Okay.
Yeah. I'll help you. Make a donation.
Fundraising is tough. We'll make a donation. We'd love it if everyone just made donations all the time. It would be so much easier. But of course, that's not the way it's going to happen, and we quite understand that. I'm not sure that I would myself to a particular cause. You can participate in events, but that is the problem at the moment. A lot of our income comes through events and activities, and obviously we can't do them at the moment. So that is difficult. But we also encourage people to organise events. So we have 2 or 3 faithful supporters who every year have some kind of event through their business where they'll raise funds and support us that way. So a lot of people can do that. It may be something you're doing normally, and my PR spiel here, but yes, it may be something you're doing with your friends or colleagues, and you can introduce some kind of fundraising into that. Make a donation. We have a friends scheme, which is 20,000 yen a year, and we send updates on our work and stories. That's where the storytelling can come in. Monthly donations is something we've introduced in the last year. This would be an easier way, people who can't just fork out reasonable 20,000 yen at a time, but 1,000 or 2,000 yen a month, 3,000 or 4,000. We have a variety of levels. At the moment, somebody's doing 5,000, somebody's doing 3,000, somebody's doing 1,000. So that will build up nicely over the year, and we can show what people achieve by taking out monthly donations.
In terms of events, on your event list, you've got a RIJ World Refugee Day event on the 20th of this month. That's likely to be put off, or are you going to do it online?
We're just working on that now. We're going to have a online lead up. We're not going to have an event. No, you're right. We will have an online lead up, World Refugee Week. So leading up there, we'll do posts on the social media. We're also on something called Global Giving, which is based in the US and the UK. They're having a promotional World Refugee Week. There's an organization from Singapore who set up something called RAW, Refugee Awareness Week. So linking in with all those different groups and activities, promoting that and encouraging people to support us. We're also on Campfire, which is a crowdfunding site,
Mm-hmm.
so people can donate to Campfire. That's in Japanese.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can add links to below the video later so people can find you easier. If you could send that to me. It also looks like July 3rd, you have a great wine bluff event. That might be...
That's great fun. That's a great fun event. I was just in touch with the venue this week, and whether or not their head office will allow activity to take place. I've left the dates on there.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be positive that we're heading for that. But I think that's one we might have to postpone.
Mm-hmm.
It depends what they're saying about the size of groups that can get together
Yeah.
in July, and it's only a month away, isn't it? So
it's so difficult now. Maybe if you had an outdoor venue, so it would be easier to space people out a little bit. I think any enclosed area inside a restaurant or bar right now is going to be difficult for the next few months.
Yeah, the wine bluff we will certainly do at some time, and yeah, an outdoor one would be really nice, and we could do that in July or August.
Mm-hmm.
And people will be looking for something a bit different to do.
Definitely.
They're tired of staying at home.
Yeah, there's some rooftop terraces or beer gardens or something. Maybe you could find a nice one and do something maybe with a few less numbers than you have in the past, but still go forward and try something.
We're going to be doing smaller events, there's no doubt about that, but we would like to do something.
Yeah. Another really fun one you've done is the, where is it? The F1.
F1, yes.
Do you want to?
Great. It's such good fun. It's simulators. A company called Escape Entertainment generously support that with their simulators, and they're so real. I mean, I drove it once and I was just scared of crashing. Well, what does that matter? But you just feel you need to drive it very carefully. And people who are motorheads, they love it, absolutely love it. And we usually have 4 simulators, and they race against each other. We should be able to do a reasonable amount of spacing there. We had booked the Aston Martin showroom. I don't know how Aston Martin will be come September, or October. It's the beginning of October, isn't it? Yeah, well, hopefully that's still on, but everything's uncertain at the moment, isn't it?
I know. Let's talk about Aston Martin, because getting collaborators, like businesses like Aston Martin, as sponsors or collaborators for this kind of event, that's such an important way to do these big events and provide them with CSR, I imagine, for their company.
Yes. So we encourage the supporters, and when you're talking about the ways to support RIJ, one was professional support, right? So professional support might be skills, it might be venues, or support in whatever way they can. And venues are magic. Aston Martin sponsoring that event. It's a great name, isn't it? It's a great space, and they should be featuring it on their websites and so on as what they're doing. And we would encourage that.
So that would help you with marketing, which is important even for sustainable businesses like charities. You have to be getting the word out there and provide. I think this kind of event is so important to have as part of your package of ways to raise money, right? Because you have to have a variety of experiences to include a wider group of people who maybe wouldn't like to just donate, but they would like to be part of this event and then learn a little bit about what you're doing, right?
Yes. Entertain people, make people have a good time. I mean, no beneficiary wants you to have a miserable time fundraising. They want everybody to have fun. So I think that's really important with the events. And we do have an interesting variety of events. It's true.
Yeah, it seems like a great one. And I love
going back to the sponsors.
Go ahead.
Going back to the sponsors, the gala at the Hilton in Tokyo. I mean, obviously we are paying the Hilton something for the event, but very, very good rates, and their support to that. Plus they support with prizes and so on. and lots of other people supporting with prizes. So a great way to support. Not the same cost to the company as it would to make a donation. I think this is important. So it's very helpful.
Wow,
To both
that's
sides.
great. And you can help each other because a lot of businesses have a budget, as far as I know, which should go to CSR projects. CSR is corporate social responsibility. So these are projects which are supposed to help community, supposed to help the environment or charities in some way. So it's great that you've been able to collaborate with Hilton, you said, and some other big companies.
These days, more companies also looking at the SDGs, the social sustainable development goals, and we certainly fit into a lot of the categories on those goals that we would like to integrate. And if we could integrate it into their company training as well, we have some great supporters who would be very keen to build it into training, CSR training, SDG training, whatever.
That's great. I was also very happy to see Yoji Masuoka in the video, and he's doing the interview about the event and holding a newborn. And I thought, that's nice.
Yeah, Yoji's one of our directors, and his mother was a volunteer with RIJ some years ago, and he's lovely. Yeah, the baby came along. Didn't stay too long, but the baby had a good time.
But it's just so nice to see fathers who are working who are still fathers. That's a rare sight still in Japan, right?
It's changing though, I think. It is rare, but it is changing.
Yeah, it is. So that was a great fun event, doing the F1 simulation. And I think on the website you also had a fun run.
Oh, we've been doing the relay. It's called Palace. Well, it's the Palace Loop Relay actually, because it's a 5-kilometer loop around the palace for runners. And so if you've got 3 or 4 people in your team, then however many times the team with the most loops is the winner. And it's a very convenient place to do it. The only thing about the palace is that we can't put up PR banners and stuff, but it's a fun event. We've had to we couldn't do it when we planned in April, which was, I think, the date was in April, and so I've actually put another date on it, but it will depend on the palace rules, so we might have to look at a different venue.
Yeah, you've
there is a variety. I've forgotten the amount of variety in our event.
Yeah, you do. So that was October 31st, I believe, on the schedule.
That's, yeah. I have to say I've put provisional dates in at the moment.
Yeah. No, everything's kind of up in the air. But something like that where it's outdoors, you're running, that's more possible to do social distancing. I think outdoor cycling events also possible. Maybe you guys could do a cycling loop around outside of Tokyo for a fundraiser or something.
Yeah, there's some very good groups who raise funds through cycling, and they do a great job on that. Yeah, we haven't got the passion in our team at the moment, but we'll see what we can do.
It depends on who's working for you and what their individual expertise and passion is, right?
Yes,
you seem to have a collaboration with some international schools in Tokyo, like St. Mary's. Is that right?
St. Mary's have been supporting RIJ since before I joined them. There used to be an annual event in December, and their choir there was always a part of that. And we've been able to continue that tradition, and in the last few years actually have a concert at the school. They're great. They are very supportive, and we have an excellent relationship with them. The other schools, it comes and goes and varies with the student groups and who is interested in doing that. Some years it's been very, very active, and then next year it will move to another school. Each school's a bit different. Sometimes it's the students who are promoting the activity, sometimes it's the teachers, very occasionally it's the parents. So We'd love to work with more Japanese schools, but that's quite difficult because they have very strict scheduling and rules on various activities. But just recently, actually, it's interesting, we've had contact from about 3 new schools, new to us, all of which are Japanese.
This when I saw this, that St. Mary's had done a big concert for you, it gave me an idea. You were saying you're struggling with marketing ideas. And of course, international schools that have the IB program, the International Baccalaureate, they, like my kids are doing, they have a CAS part of their studies where they're supposed to be doing social work or community development or learning something new. And I thought maybe you could tap into this and get some young people, because a concert might be difficult, but you could get maybe some young people on your team to start making you guys for RIJ some TikTok videos. TikTok is a great marketing tool to get people thinking about new topics and stuff. And actually, TikTok is something I've suggested to a few other people who have connections with young people, because young people do TikTok so well. They understand it. So if you could get a hashtag, Refugees International Japan, and you could set them on a theme, and they could make a bunch of videos and just tag you guys, that would be great marketing, and it's a free interface. So, just to get some energy behind some of the marketing ideas, and then you could put that on your website and, just add more young passion behind some of the wonderful things you guys are doing.
That sounds lovely. I'd certainly look into that. That sounds great. Yeah. And it might actually be the reason for the CAS group that these other schools have contacted us. So I'll see. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, good luck. We've got a few more minutes. Any ideas or targets or things that you'd really like to move into, or do you kind of feel like everything's on hold right now because of coronavirus?
Well, we're trying not to be on hold. We are doing what we can within the setup. What I would like to increase is we're working on, through the stories, and you've commented on the stories we've got, and lots and lots of stories, also producing those in manga form.
Nice.
I think, we have done about 4 of them in manga form, but we'd like more of those. So people with those sorts of skills who want to, I think the thing about RIJ is, because we're small, we're very flexible. And if somebody wants to do something which they have a hobby, or they want to improve their skills or advance themselves, and want to test out their skills, and we're very happy to provide that sort of opportunity. So people who can do design of some kind, graphics, and the more graphics, and we want to do some animation graphics as well. So we're looking at all these kinds of things that definitely would attract more and more Japanese as well. I think this is one area.
As well as young people.
So, and I think the young people, they are the future, and very, very keen on getting them more and more involved. And I'm very impressed with the sort of strata of young social entrepreneurs. I've been to a few events where I've seen the energy and the ideas and the enthusiasm from that group of people, and they all have skills and talents that they would like to advance, maybe can't as much in their work sphere as they would like to. RIJ is very willing to discuss with them and allow them to use their talents, which will be a benefit to both them and to us.
That's great. And sharing stories, I think, is such a wonderful way to connect to people personally, right? So if you can reach out to universities in Japan and get university students to even read some of the stories and comment on how it relates to their lives, high school students or university students, that making connections in that way, I think, would be a great way forward to get not only funding, but also just kind of a greater knowledge about the kind of work that you guys do.
It also reminds me of an event we did a few years ago, and I would like to do again in some way. Is what did we call it? Never mind. But it was in pairs, doing the storytelling in pairs, right? So you would have two parts to the story. The first part is, this is me and this is what's happened to me. This is the problems I've faced as a refugee. And then both of you tell your story and say how you feel now about that, because you'd feel pretty awful at all the things that have happened. And discuss that. And then you go into the second part of the story, which is being part of an RIJ funded project and how that has changed life and so on. And that transition between people, I think we called it Beyond the Headlines, that event. But I think that's something that we could do, and particularly in a school situation, would be a great learning experience, and the feeling and experiencing through the storytelling.
I think so. And I think it has a lot of positive knock-on effects for people that are suffering stigma for whatever reason in Japan. For example, there's been a recent discussion I had with Rochelle Kopp about the stigma against even getting a coronavirus test. You know, like if you had corona, there would be a stigma. Or if you came from Fukushima and you relocated, there's a stigma. If your family's from Hiroshima, there's a stigma. So once you talk about refugee stories and all the things that they've been through, it can really help people have more empathy for anyone who comes from a different background. I think that
we did it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We did a session on using case studies. I talked about how to use it in training and so on, in case studies. And at the end of it, one man, Andrew, came up to me and he said, "You've made me see refugees in a completely different light now, not with pity, but with respect and admiration."
Nice.
And that's what we want our stories to tell people.
Exactly.
That we are all to be respected and admired for facing challenges and doing the best we can.
Yeah. I heard a great interview yesterday with a famous director and actor, Keegan, his name is, and he was talking about now that he's a celebrity, he's treated differently as a person of color, as a Black person. And so because people know his story and they can connect to him on a more personal level because they've seen his movies or they've seen him on TV. So I think the whole idea that you're doing so well of getting stories out and just making it more relatable. And people know that story. They know the Sierra Leone All-Stars, you know, like they can connect on a personal level is powerful.
Yep. Yes, that's it. Storytelling.
That's
great.
it. That's it. That's the way forward. So I look forward to seeing loads more updates on your YouTube channel and your Facebook and maybe even TikTok soon.
Yes, I'm definitely going to work on that. That's great.
That's awesome.
And thank you, Joy. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Oh, it was so wonderful talking to you. And I'm a big fan of all the work you do. And I hope this can get you more people excited to follow you and hear more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Bye, everyone.
And we've got another talk today at 5 o'clock, talking to Katie O'Brien, who's passionate about Eco de Eco, environmental tricks. All right. See you later. Have a good day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.